welcome back to Collective on RiotRadio.ca. I'm one of your hosts, Morgan Kelly. I'm here with our guest, Caesar-Chavannes, and we'll be talking about what it's like to be a politician in 2019. So first of all, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's winding down. We're getting close to Election Day, so yeah. Gosh, good.
Yeah. So what is your opinion on the campaign to date, and did you watch the debates?
We're just going to jump right in.
We're jumping right in.
I thought we were like warming up with a few, how are yous, everything okay. But we're going to jump right in. So what do I think about the campaign so far? And what do I think about the debates? Mm-hmm. So the campaign so far, I think, has been an interesting one. I think that there has been a lot of slip-ups on all sides. But I think that if Canadians are really paying attention to this election, it could be one that really changes the landscape of Canada. And I say that because I watched the debate, and you're seeing the leaders sort of go back and forth on issues that are very important, but not actually being grounded in a principled stance on something. There's some that are okay on climate change. There's some that are okay on immigration. There's some that are okay on justice reform better than others, but they're sort of still skating across the top, and I'm not sure that's what we need right now in our country.
And why didn't you run again?
Okay, we're just jumping right in.
Yeah, we're getting there.
So I was elected in 2015 as a Liberal and now sit as an independent member of Parliament. And I think there were a number of factors that influenced my decision. The first being that I made a commitment to people at the door when I knocked on 20,000 doors in the by-election in 2014 and then the general election in 2015. And I told them that I was going to go out the same way that I came into politics. I was going to try to be authentic. And people said, no, Selena, politics will change you. It's impossible. And I really wanted to make sure that I stuck to that, and I stuck to that principle, and I said, no, I'm going to be that person that, does things differently, does politics differently. That's what the campaign promised, and I said, I'm going to be that person. And then when I got there, there were certain promises that in our platform that were made that were broken really early. Electoral reform is one of them. And then sort of the attitude within the system, within the party system, and the behaviors, I didn't appreciate. And I think that if at some point your values don't line up with the organizational structure or the principles within that organization, you need to make a decision as to whether you stay or you go. And my decision was to go because we were no longer in sync. And I thought that I would be doing a disservice to the people that I represented, and not just the Liberals who voted for me, because I got in because Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and Green and everybody else in between decided that they were going to put their faith in me. And so I had to do right by the people in my riding.
And just to follow up to your answer there, what kind of response have you gotten for sticking to your beliefs?
I know. So this is what makes it difficult not to run, is that when I meet people in the street, when I talk to people at, I was at the Brooklyn Legion the other day, and I'm still doing all my events. I was in Toronto this morning. I'm here, and I'm battling that 401 to come back here. And I'm at these events, and people are saying to me, because you have done that, because you stuck to your guns, because you did politics differently, we will vote for you to run as an independent. And, I really wish that I had given that much more consideration before I made my decision not to run. I don't want to be that person who's wishy-washy, who says, I'm not going to do it, and then, I'm going to do it, and then I think that is not who I am. And I think right now what I need to do is to remove myself. And so I've been getting a lot of people saying, Selena, we really want you to do this, or at least consider coming back. And I'm taking that consideration.
And was there anything that really surprised you about the election process as an MP?
So we're talking about 2015 or like 2015?
Yeah.
I think what really surprised me was the level of engagement that people had. So there's this general consensus that people are apathetic towards elections, and people don't know really what's happening. They're disengaged. I would say that that's not really true, and it's certainly over the last 4 years. I think you're seeing more and more people running. You are seeing more people putting their hands up to say, I want to be a part of this. So when I went to the doors, people were genuinely interested in talking. They were genuinely interested in listening and trying to understand my point of view, even if the person on the other side was not a liberal and we had different political views. The level of engagement and civic engagement around saying, okay, this is someone at my door who is saying that she's going to put her name on a ballot and run. Let me give her a little bit of respect. And that, for me, that was cool. I love that. I love being at the doors. I love that exchange with people and saying, we could agree to disagree. And for me, I thought that was going to be the hardest part. It ended up being the easiest part and the part that I thought was most interesting. Yeah.
Wow. What was it like being an MP? And could you give us a day-to-day responsibilities?
Okay, so over the 4 years, I was first the Member of Parliament, and then I was the Parliamentary Secretary to Prime Minister, then Parliamentary Secretary to International Development, then I left that and now Citizen Independent. So I could give you the different lives as my life progressed. So right at the beginning, Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister is a huge title, huge sort of responsibility, because you are essentially, you play tag team. Wherever, if there's any meetings or events that the Prime Minister can attend, tags you in, can you do it? And I will fill in his place. So when I was in Ottawa, my days would start at 4:30, 5 o'clock, to make sure that I'm reading all of the news articles for the day, so I'm briefed on everything. And then I have a background in research, so I don't only read the left-leaning newspapers, I read the right-leaning newspapers too. And then I tend to read all the comments, because the worst thing for me is to get a question from someone and get caught off guard. And the chances are of me getting a question from an article that I didn't read are higher than getting a question from an article that I did read. Because people will say, oh, you're liberal, so I'll ask you a sort of left-leaning question, and then something comes out of right-wing. Anyhow, so I'd read all those articles, and then I would read them again, a few of them again in French, because I was trying to learn French at the same time. And I would go to do my meetings, my stakeholder meetings, go to question period, go back, do some more stakeholder meetings, and then I had to do receptions in the evening, do speeches, do engagements with other stakeholders. And I would end up coming at home at around 10 o'clock. And then when I come into Whitby, again, it's the same thing. I'd come off the train at 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. I'd probably do 2 events that night before I go home. I'd do events all day Saturday. And I'd block off Sunday morning for myself and my family. And then I'd catch a train on Sunday at 4 o'clock and go back to Ottawa.
I don't know how you do all that.
So that was the first year. And then the second year, it was the exact same thing. But I was flying around the world to Japan and Mexico. And yeah, so it was that plus the international development piece, which I think, today's the International Day of the Girl. And when we talk about international development, it's one of the greatest stories Canada never tells. Where people do amazing work around the world, and then there's a catastrophe, and these Canadians double down and do even more amazing work. And so it was, I loved that role. I truly appreciated it. But it was those same long days. And then it's like, oh, and by the way, you need to go to Japan in 3 days.
Wow.
So it's intense, and then when you're here, you're expected to go to different events, and you're expected to come to Durham College and do the interview, and then leave here and go to another thing. So it's a really time-intensive role or job.
But worth it.
Oh, it's worth every minute of it. Like when you could see, especially with international development, when you could see a policy put in place that puts women and girls at the center of everything that we do, from decision making to execution of projects to evaluation, and seeing how much impact you could have on the poorest and most vulnerable people in the world. It's amazing. But also when you come home and you see things like the fact that, you know, we still have boiled water advisories, but we could see that those are going down. You know, that we could see that, you know, that you know, when we look at the investment in mental health services, that was done in the first year. But it also gives you a perspective of what we still need to do. Should we still have boiled water advisories in 2019? Should we still have a national crisis of missing and murdered women? Should we still not have adequate housing in 2019 and with a past majority government? And so again, if going back to that first question, it's very hard for me to reconcile in my brain having a majority government like we did and not doing those very bold, transformative initiatives that we promised Canadians we would do.
So that you would say that would be one of the challenges you faced while running in your campaign?
Well, yeah, I'd say that, you know, the challenge is keeping promises. You know, you go out to people's doors and you interrupt. I interrupted the guy making pickled jalapenos. I interrupted dinner. I interrupted like somebody doing something with their child. And I said, look, I will do this. I will do this right. If you put your faith in me, you put your trust in me with that ballot, you're going to hand over your voice in that ballot to me. And I'm going to take it, and then there is an expectation that I'm going to use that properly, and maybe I'm the crazy one. Maybe I'm a little nuts, thinking that I actually should keep my promise. Maybe I'm nuts in that sense. But then shouldn't we all be mad about this? Shouldn't we all be angry about the fact that you get politicians coming to your door, interrupting your lives and saying, I want you to trust me, and here, give me your trust. And then when we get there, we're like, oh, you know, that's too big for us to do. Oh my God, like, you know, the boiled water thing, we can't really do that. It won't poll well. You know, mandatory minimums, yeah, we said we're going to get rid of it, but, you know, that doesn't poll well, because it only impacts Indigenous and, you know, Black people. So we're not going to do that either. You know, like, I'm sorry. I can't reconcile that. I can't bring myself to terms with not doing what the most vulnerable in our community need us to do.
Breaking that trust as well.
Breaking that trust. It's humanity. I think the way that we treat people is the basic tenet of our democracy. Nothing works. The legislation, the regulation, the things that we think because we put on these suits and these, you know, high-powered clothes that we are supposed to do these things. But the basic tenet of our democracy is how we treat each other. What we do to help each other, and that's what the job is. And if we think it's anything else, if we think that it's ours for the taking and not a borrowed job, then we shouldn't be there. You should not be there in the first place.
I think that's a very powerful response. So what advice would you give to post-secondary students interested in getting into politics?
First of all, run. You know, so people have always said to me, you know, representation matters. You as a woman of color, you as a Black woman being there, it means something. And representation matters when you have something worthy of representing. And honestly, when I talk to young people, when I see the passion that they have, and my only fear is that they get jaded and cynical. Well, I said they, you. But when I see the passion that you have, when I saw Durham College's project, and Chanel invited me here, and that project around taking that journalism piece and going to Kenya and documenting that and filming it, there was love in that. Y'all see the world with eyes wide open, and then some adult person comes along and says, yeah, I don't think you could do that. Well, why not? Why not? Why can't that be done? The word impossible even says, I'm possible. And it only hasn't been done because some crazy person hasn't done it yet. Everything is possible. And so my representation mattering is because you guys give me something to matter about. And that's the hope that I have. The hope that I have is that we don't screw it up so bad that y'all are cynical and give up hope. Because young people around the world here and around the world are doing such amazing things, and it really saddens me. It really does. It saddens me to know that I was part of something that I thought was going to be what young people looked at and said, damn, I could do that. And it ended up being something not that. And so I feel guilty that I may have disappointed some people. I feel guilty that it didn't work out the way that it did. But I'm hoping that you guys will run in packs. Run like a squad, so that people can't push you over. They can't derail you. They can't make you feel badly when you're standing up for something that you firmly believe in. They will support you and they will push you, and they'll push you to do better. I mean, why can't we criticize the Prime Minister and still support liberal policy? Well, you can't do that because you're not going to be liberal if you challenge the Prime Minister. He's not a child. He's the Prime Minister of a G7 country. Like, let's be realistic about who we're talking about here. So you can't push the Prime Minister. Is he that fragile? And if that's what we have, then y'all need to run now. How old are you?
I'm 22.
Yeah, please go ahead, do it now. Yeah.
I'm going.
Okay. After you finish this advanced degree, do it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Diploma. Okay.
Okay, go.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. That was Selena Caesar-Chavannes, former MP of Whitby. Coming up, that's the end of our show today. We look forward to seeing you back here on Riot Radio next week for an international education-themed episode. Tune in to hear about some